Good morning. Good morning. Apologies for the late start. We are having some technical difficulties, so we'll be joining you in just a second with the 7 things to do right as a poly newbie. I'm super excited about this topic.
I sure am too.
Just a second.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Great topic. Let's go for it. There's a lot of clicking on your side, Tara. What's going on?
Is there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all I hear is click, click, click.
Oh, well, I was working on some of the notes. So good morning, André. How are you today? Happy Monday. Happy holiday Monday.
Yeah, happy holiday Monday. What's the holiday?
You're really hard to hear.
Oh, I wonder, more than usual?
Maybe you should sit a little closer.
Yeah, is this any better now?
A little better. A little better.
A little better? All right, I'll try and enunciate better. So you say it's a holiday? What's the holiday?
I don't know. It's a civic holiday here in Canada. I'm guessing it might be a civic holiday as well in the U.S. So if people know, or people joining us from the U.S., please let us know in the comments what holiday it is. I think it's just like to give people, you know, in the summer and spring, we seem to get one holiday Monday a month. So yeah. So.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not even sure if it's a Canadian thing or if it's just in Ontario. The other parts of the world. And I don't know that it's happening in Quebec here.
No? Well, I don't know. I don't know either. Okay, let's jump in because I'm really excited about this topic. So whether you're joining us live or in the replay, let us know. So we're talking about the 7 things to do right as a poly newbie. And so please say hello in the comments. We actually did a poll in the group. So if you're not part of our Let's Talk Polyamory group, make sure you join us. So I don't know if people who are watching to let us know which stage you are in the poly journey. So from not poly at all to curious to being a newbie. So maybe getting into a bit of action, practicing. So that's, yep, you've taken a bunch of steps, but maybe you're not fully comfortable. Also poly terrified, so maybe you're scared to start or you've started and encountered some issues with that. Poly experience would be like lots of experience and super comfortable doing it, you know, and poly veteran is like, yeah, I've been doing the things all the time. So we did a poll. So you haven't done the poll, figure it out. Where do you think you are, André?
Yeah, I was just wondering that very thing. You know, I think I'm a bit of a old whore now, so I'm probably going towards. I don't like to ever think of myself as an expert. So someplace just before veteran, maybe poly experience by now. Yeah, poly experience.
Yeah, well, we've been doing this about 6 years now, and have had a lot of practice. And I feel pretty comfortable with it. So I would say somewhere in between the two as well. I wouldn't say a veteran. I feel like a veteran is like really long time. So. All right. So welcome to Mondays with Tara and André. For those who don't know us, I'm Tara Lynn Franco, and I am one of the coaches here in Let's Talk Polyamory. I'm a relationship and awesomeness coach.
And I'm André Turcotte. I'm a sex-positive psychotherapist.
And so we're the founders of the Let's Talk Polyamory community, now on TikTok and Instagram. And we go live every week in our private Facebook group, Let's Talk Polyamory, with a topic about polyamory, navigating open relationships, all the topics. So you can find us here. There's about 100 videos. So if you're watching us from YouTube or somewhere else, you'll want to jump in the group because that's where all the fun happens. So, we did a topic a while ago, and this is a bit related about the mistakes we made in opening up. And so, I don't know, André, but I think we made our share of mistakes. And so I think we've learned from them, which is how we've come up with these 7 things.
Yeah, we definitely made our fair share of our mistakes, and we did learn from those that we're aware of. But I wonder about the other mistakes that we may have made that we were not even aware of, or what mistakes might we be making now that we think everything is fine. And so, it's always, I think, a good idea to look at what's going on for us, but then also try to imagine how it's being received by other people, because they may not tell you, they may just be experiencing it. So it makes me think of intention and impact, right? So my intention is pure and I hope that it's all wonderful, but how is it landing? What's the impact on the other people? And we need to find that stuff out, because it could otherwise not go well for us or for them. So it's
and I think that's a big part about being a poly newbie is that sometimes you go in, I would say most people go in with the greatest of intentions, right? Not to hurt people, not to do things that are wrong, and then end up like making some of these like common errors and that sort of thing at the start. So, that's why our group is here. We have a lot of information. We share a lot of information, and because we have so many people joining the group, we thought it'd be great to develop a course, like an intro course to polyamory, non-monogamy that people can take to give them kind of the basics, the foundation to feel more secure in their relationships. So we're calling it Poly Newbies. So even if you don't identify as polyamorous, it's if you're wanting to engage in open relationships or swinging or lifestyle, it's kind of the start off to get you the foundational elements. So there's all kinds of things in it. We did, lots of people had suggestions in the group, and we'll talk a bit more about that as well at the end. But if you're interested in it and want to find out more, we started a wait list, and you can drop newbie in the chat and I'll send you the link. So yeah.
Even to that point, Tara, we talk about the mistakes we might have made in the beginning, or maybe mistakes is too great a word. Maybe it's just blunders or things, misinformation. And makes me think back to the titles that we even use, right? So we say poly, or polyam or polyamorous. And I think for us, we use it as a very large umbrella term. Maybe it's more about consensual non-monogamy or ethically non-monogamous, E&M. And in that big umbrella, then there would be things like being polyamorous, swinging, one-night stands, friends with benefits, things of that nature. So we might have started out announcing ourselves as one thing and finding out later on, well, in fact, no, maybe that was inaccurate. It wasn't quite right. And those are some of the things that we would learn as well. So maybe in the beginning, we might have announced ourselves being a certain way when in fact, to those who knew, those other veterans, they might have said, well, that's not quite right. Maybe you should, have more information about that.
Yeah. So that's why the number one thing to do right is to explore and learn and educate yourself. So that's why there's groups like us, there's tons of videos and that sort of thing. So learning the basics about what's out there, what are the common definitions, what are the possible pitfalls that you may come across, and awareness of things that you might do unintentionally, like unicorn hunting or couples privilege or consent. So that's the first thing to do right, is sort of to arm yourself in those basic definitions. What is polyamory? What's kitchen table polyamory? What's parallel polyamory? All those things. So, kind of arming yourself with the basic information, definitions, and understanding of kind of what's out there. Like, not to say that other people won't have different definitions, but it's important to at least get that first part, is like just kind of understand what's going on. So that was number one.
Yeah, knowledge is power, right? So we become informed by it, and then we can communicate what it is we're wanting, and we can find out from them what it is they're offering and they're wanting, which again goes into number two, right? Communication. I think in the beginning, I might have thought that being in an open relationship, being polyamorous, was going to be all about sex, and it may well be. But the biggest part of it for me has really been about communication, learning how to communicate well, learning how to listen well, how to speak my intentions well. And it really makes a big difference on the experience of being E&M.
Yeah, I mean, we put this as number two, but it probably should have been number one. But I think that it is the thing, I think, that will define whether or not you'll be successful, is how well you communicate. So at the beginning and when you're first starting, or you mean all the way through, having some essential conversations before getting into action, and knowing how and when to communicate and planning that out. I think that's the common thing, is people don't have those conversations, or they make assumptions. So, like common things that we hear in the group is that someone's not clearly communicating about someone that they met, and maybe the other person assumes that they're going to tell them, and that's something they want to know. Or, like not checking in with your partner about what they value, or not checking in with people about, testing and that sort of thing. So really, communication, another big one is not expressing what our needs are, and then being disappointed or frustrated or hurt because the other person didn't magically figure them out.
Sure. And if we don't tell them, how are they going to know, right? And we might be a little bit shy or reluctant to be so forthcoming and asking people directly. But I think, we mentioned one part about practicing it, right? So if we play it out in our mind, if we can announce it aloud, we can hear how it sounds, and we can say, well, it doesn't sound quite right, or yeah, that sounds about right. And it really helps to do that because I think back to when we first started dating like this, and I was a little apprehensive about bringing up the idea of sexual history, sexual health, sexual testing, all of those things. And my fantasy was, well, if I'm going to announce that on a first or second date, are they going to think that I am simply there for the sex, or are they going to think that I am in some way, having some health concerns that they should also know about? I had these built up fantasies in my mind because I was somewhat unfamiliar with how I was going to announce it. But I went through it a couple of times, and now I'm much more comfortable. In fact, I enjoy bringing up the idea that we might talk about sexual health because it makes me feel as though I've done my due diligence, and they might also see that I take it seriously. The point being, though, had I not ever thought about it and just turned from it, I would not have had this opportunity, and I would not have felt as comfortable as I do today. So really, a lot of it is practicing. Know that you might make a couple of stumbles or bumbles, but that it is survivable. But the other person too is wanting to try and make these communications with us as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we communicate with people, it allows them to consent to whatever it is that's going on. So maybe, without sharing with someone what it is that you want, which leads into number 4, is they won't necessarily know what they're consenting to, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a common thing people ask is, when should I tell someone that I'm polyamorous? We're not going to get it. I don't think we should get into it now because that's a big conversation, but it is something to think about, is when do I want to tell people?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, right? Because a lot of people are wanting to be very forthcoming. They want to be completely honest because that is the ethical part of it. But they're also not wanting to necessarily lead with that because they might want things to develop a little bit more organically. So yeah, when do we announce it? When would be the right time? And maybe there is no the right time for everyone. Maybe it's more of an individual thing. But again, we invite ourselves to start to explore this and figure out what would work well for us. And how has it been when other people have made the announcement or not made the announcement, and what's been like on that side?
Exactly. So number 3 is getting clear on what you want and don't want. So this is like thinking about style of non-monogamy you're looking at, what type of openness you're interested in, and then it leads to the communication because it's also talking to each other about those things and your needs. So developing some sort of roadmap or blueprint on where you're going to start if you're new, and maybe even where you want to go, but at least knowing where you are right now, what it is you want, and doing that, own internal inflection first. And then if you have a partner, talking to them about it. If you're solo, you would still do the same thing. It's important to really know what it is you want and why. I like to think about it as being like, why is being consensually non-monogamous important to me? What am I wanting to get out of it? What would I like to receive and what would I like to give in it? So
yeah, that's a great question. And maybe that's a question that we ask even before going, into any of this. Maybe we should really ask ourselves about our motive, right? What am I looking for? What am I not looking for? It is in some ways step 1 of the cure, right? Knowing what it is you're wanting and finding a way of getting it. But coming to tune with ourselves and finding out, what are we really in this for? What are we wanting? What are we trying to achieve from this? What are we wanting to avoid or not wanting?
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, for those who are watching either in the replay or the live with us, what you feel about this. Do you feel clear in what it is you want or how you're proceeding in non-monogamy? I know I just spoke to a couple recently, and they were sharing how they did want different things and trying to come to a place where they can have a shared experience that feels comfortable for them to start and have that like foundation to feel good and then proceed, and that's really about knowing why it is you want it and what you want out of it. So.
And then once you do that, that kind of rolls into number 4, right? The understanding of what is going to be coming with it, our attachment styles, any jealousy you might have, any kind of baggage that we're coming into. So I have the idea that I might want to be in an open relationship, and that might be the most fantastic fantasy. I'm going to go out and interact with these people, but maybe I've not, if I'm coupled, maybe I've not really imagined what it's going to be like to have my partner doing these things as well, right? Because when we first started, my fantasy was, well, it was going to be ego-centered, and I was going to be the recipient of all these wonderful feelings, and I did not really anticipate what kind of level of jealousy I might come across, or what my attachment styles were. And understanding that, I think, can really help inform us as to what we can imagine it being like, what we can anticipate. And should we have these bumps and roads, how we're going to go about talking about them. But we have an understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, understanding your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of our like more intensive open relationship and polyamory mastery program, but it's also something we touch on in our Poly Newbies course. So all these things actually that we've talked about are things that are covered in that new course, which I'm super excited about. Okay, so understanding your stuff. So number 5 is testing the waters. And I mean, this is after you do all the other 4 things. And part of testing the waters is a thing that, you know, people, if you've been in any groups or done any research on polyamory, a lot of people talk about the most missed step of disentanglement. So if you're approaching a polyamory from already being in a relationship, how to be secure in being alone. So when your partner's on a date or doing things independently. Like one of the common things people try to do at the beginning, a common mistake, and I mean, I think we've done it too, is let's have a date on the same night. Let's always make our date on the same night, right? Sounds good. You go on a date, I go on a date. It doesn't interrupt our daily scheduled program. But it can't always happen that way, right? And there can be a misbalance. So part of testing the waters and getting started into action is also learning how to be secure and alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as you say, maybe the timing is not going to work out where we're, synchronized on the same time. And then you go on a date, and if I'm not set up for it, if I'm not prepared for it emotionally, what's it going to be like? And in the beginning, I'll tell you what it was like. You would go on a date, and I would be kind of left alone, as it were, to my imagination. And I would imagine that you were doing all these wonderful things. Whereas by contrast, compare and despair, I was not on the date. I was not doing these things. So it really was the breeding ground for my jealousy, because I'd not yet looked at my jealousy. I'd not looked at my attachment style, and I was not well positioned for myself. So the idea that we might put in these kind of like provisions, we go on a date at the same time, might be wonderful. But if it doesn't work out that way, what's going to happen to you? Where are you going to be left? How are you going to feel about it? Mm-hmm. And if you do the work beforehand, then should that type of situation arise, you'll feel much more secure. You'll feel much more at ease. And you might even have some compersion for your partner going out on a date.
Yeah. And part of testing the waters is that whole idea of disentanglement and learning how to be alone, but also like, what are the first baby steps you want to take? Like, what's a comfortable, especially if you're alone or already partnered, is what is the thing that we can do that feels good to start? And so sometimes people like to do a yes, no, maybe list. Like, these are kinds of things that I imagine. And like some of the yes things are like, yeah, let's try that right away. So a first action for someone could be, I don't know, like a lot of first actions, I think, is having a threesome or something like that. Or like going to a club or a party and observing, and seeing how you feel. And, before you get into action, big action.
Yeah. And that holds true for whether you are solo or in a couple or whatever configuration, right? That we might have this list and we might know it ourselves. What am I definitely down for? What am I absolutely not for? And what am I kind of gray or maybe about? And we'll know those things, but then we should also be sharing that information with our partner as well, and maybe invite them to share theirs. So what, as a couple, for example, are we wanting to do? Are we wanting to pull the lid off and do this thing? Or are we wanting to only do these other things? But let's do it by consensus, and let's make it consensual, that we both have a say in whether or not we're wanting to do this, or all of us have a say in it. So that's critically important as well.
Yeah. And just approaching it with curiosity, I think, like sometimes we can be very, we think, oh, we're going to be just great. We're going to be super comfortable with this, and, you might not be, and like, that's okay. you can learn from that and understand maybe what scenarios might be more triggering for you. It's a very, very powerful data, as I like to say, and not, rather than judging yourself for being like, why did I feel so jealous? I shouldn't feel so jealous, or whatever it is, right? I should feel compersion, like, those kinds of things that people get caught in, is that I'm not doing this perfect, so I mustn't be suited for this.
I try to stay away from all those shoulds and all those moral judgments that I should be this way, I shouldn't be that way. But also the thing that is critically important, and I think it's really so much so in E&M because, well, it's just different in so many ways. But I think the idea that we have to advocate for ourselves. And if we go into something, we have the mindset that we're wanting to participate, and then we find out that it's not quite what we're wanting, we are always within our rights to say, no, this is not working for me. And hopefully we have a supportive partner or partners who will abide by that and not pressure us into things, not say, oh, come on, baby, just a little bit more, or let's do it this time for me and that next time for you. We want people who will understand and appreciate that, because it will create the foundation of security. And when we feel secure, we're more apt to have a much better, richer experience of this, rather than going into it out of fear or resentment or any of those things. So really, we need to be mindful with each other and check in for that consent, and within our rights to let it be known what's working and not working as well.
Yeah, I think one of the other common mistakes that happens, and I think this falls into sort of the testing the waters and communication, both of those, things to do right, is sometimes people agree to things that they don't want to do in order, because they want their partner to be happy, right? And then they end up having lots of feelings and feeling bad about it, or angry or frustrated. And so it creates a hard situation for both people, because the one person on the one hand is like, I thought this was okay with you, not knowing that someone might have agreed to it to make them happy, but then they're miserable,
Right. And hopefully that kind of scenario, we could play that out with words before it actually ever happened. So how would you feel if I were to go on a date with this person while you're doing your thing? And the person might say, well, yeah, that's fine. But have they really taken the moment to think about how they might feel and what it's going to be like and all those other things? And again, yes, as you say, we should not feel as though we're doing it out of pressure or resentment or any type of hostility, but more that we're wanting to do this. And if we're not, then we have to announce that we're not on board with this. But most times we are curious and we are social creatures, and we do derive a lot of enjoyment out of these type of interactions. So we don't want to be overcautious, and hopefully we're not trying to warn you against all this, but talking about it beforehand really does set the stage for us to feel more secure in whatever might happen.
Exactly. So that's a perfect lead-in, as usual, André, to number 6, which is, once you've done all these other preliminary things to set yourself up to do things right, is actually creating a plan and all the elements that go with it. And I think this is probably the big misstep. Like, people are like, yeah, I think we know what we want. Yeah, we've got some rules in place, but really understanding how you're going to proceed, at least at the beginning, like start in stage 1 and where you want to go, and then back that up with things like agreements. So if you're in a partnered situation, setting up agreements with your partner. And the thing that we teach in our bigger program, Open Relationship and Polyamory Mastery, is our values-based agreement. So creating, rather than rules, creating agreements based on what we value in our relationship and how we're going to uphold those values, which is very different than, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And I understand, like, at the beginning, it feels tempting to do that because it feels secure. It feels like you might feel more secure if you had specific rules. But when you have agreements, I think there's more, it's a different view of it. It's a positive view on it. It's like, these are the things that I'm going to do to make this feel good for both of us, or all of us, right? So letting people know in advance when you're having dates, because you value openness and communication, all those kinds of things. And then setting up regular check-ins, frequent check-ins, especially at the beginning, on, how is this going? Is this working for us? What would we like to shift? What do I need to make me feel more secure? Is it something we can change? And then bigger reviews if we want to change change things more broadly. So having those set up in place.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting to think about having reviews in a relationship. It seems so unromantic in so many ways, right? It seems so foreign. I've not been in relationships where we would actually have a check-in before, but it's really a fantastic time to make my announcements about things that might be more difficult to make those announcements. So, for example, I don't like when X, Y, and Z happens. When do I announce it? When it's actually happening, or afterwards when I might be hurt or even resentful, all these things. So being able to talk about it again beforehand is so vitally important.
Yeah, and I think that's a common mistake people make is, um, especially when you're a poly newbie, is that you can have these conversations. You do communicate maybe all the time, but it's often when you're already in that state of feeling triggered. And then the whole conversation, it feels like the whole room is filled up with the conversation all the time. Like you're always talking about your relationship, and there's never a break from it. So what people like to do, especially at the beginning, is like more frequent check-ins, like a weekly check-in, like how are we doing, what's coming up, and that sort of thing, rather than every day being like, let's talk about our relationship and how shitty I feel or whatever, right?
Yeah, and the other side of that, unfortunately, sometimes people get into a situation, it's uncomfortable, they try to talk about it, it doesn't really work out well, so they say, well, let's just take a break from this, or take a break from each other, take a break regardless. And taking a break might be the best thing, but how are you going to be using that time in the break? Will you simply be avoiding those feelings in those difficult situations, or will you actually be reflective upon it and talk about it and figure out what is at play, what is going on, so we have a better understanding? We might say something that's going to lead to some progressive communication, right? Because if we're just simply having the same arguments over and over again, well, there's not going to be much movement. And just simply taking a break without processing it doesn't really lead to any kind of progression. So really, taking a break could be okay, but let's find ways to have open and honest conversations.
Yeah, like use the break to do things with, which is a great segue again, my love, to number 7, which is knowing that you'll make some mistakes and use them to learn from. I mean, we do this all the time, you know? It's how we learn and grow, right? And like I said a little bit earlier, is using these things that come up as data. Like they're simply data rather than a judgment on who we are as a person and that sort of thing. You know, we don't want to behave poorly towards our partners, but if something comes up that's really triggering and that does happen, let's learn from that and understand what was really behind that emotional feeling, and then learning from that so it doesn't happen again.
Perfect.
So I think we've definitely learned from our mistakes.
Oh yeah. There's been a couple, and they were some heavy knocks at times, but yeah, learning from them. But it's unfortunate because in many of these circumstances, you might not be invited to really explore what error you might have made, and people might just dismiss you. And that's really unfortunate. So that's why it is so important to kind of have the foresight ahead of time to find out, where are we going? What are we doing? What will the implications and repercussions be, so that we can really avoid hurting other people and also being hurt ourselves.
Exactly. So the 7 things to do right as a poly newbie, we'll just go over them again. Explore, so learn the basics. Communication. Number 2. Number 3, getting clear on what you want and don't want. Number 4, understanding your stuff. So attachment, jealousy, any relationship baggage you might be bringing into the situation. Testing the waters. So some first baby actions, including disentanglement. Number 6, creating a foundation and a plan, which includes agreements, check-ins, and all those things that allows you to transition into more openness. And then number 7, knowing that you'll make some mistakes and using them to learn from.
Yeah.
Those are the 7 things. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we are developing a very new program, or I think I'm going to call it a course. It's a little bit shorter, called NEWBIES. So it is to give you the foundational elements to start in polyamory. So basically all these 7 things and more. So if you want to learn more and get on our wait list, you can drop newbie in the comments and I will share you the link to join the wait list. What's cool about this, we're going to let 10 people in. And to start with, and the benefit of joining at the beginning is that you'll be there for the live trainings. Of course, the replays will be available. And then after that, this course will just be more of a static course that you can just take. It also comes with some worksheets and all the things you need to get started as a poly newbie. I'm like super excited about this. There's so many new people in the group, and I think this is something that I haven't seen out there, and I'm excited to develop it. If you've been doing polyamory a little bit longer and want a more deeper dive, we have our open relationship and polyamory mastery program, which is a 16-week immersive program, which is kind of builds on top of that foundation and goes into a bit of a deeper dive and includes coaching with André and I. So if you have any questions about any of that, you can book a call with us. Just send a DM to one of us and we'll let you know the link, and we can talk about what's going on with you and how we can support you. But until then, enjoy your holiday Monday, if it's a holiday Monday. And André, I'm so happy to be reunited with you very soon tonight.
Should be fun.
Yay. Okay, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks. Bye.